This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Israel warns Lebanon to take control of Hezbollah or face the consequences. Plus, CBN's exclusive interview with Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. He tells us Israel could declare sovereignty over parts of biblical Judea and Samaria. And aliyah, the return of the Jewish people to the Promised Land, is on the rise despite COVID-19. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Israeli troops remain on high alert along Israel's northern border after heavy fighting erupted there. And as we heard from Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Israel is warning Lebanon to take control of the Iranian-backed Hezbollah or else. Israel is warning Lebanon that it must prevent Hezbollah attacks against Israel or suffer the consequences.
We sent a very clear message to the Lebanese government. You have to take over southern Lebanon. If you will allow Hezbollah to attack our communities, we will retaliate, and it will be painful.
Lebanon's prime minister accused Israel of provoking what he called a dangerous escalation, and the information minister blamed Israel for triggering the border clash.
Lebanon condemns the continuing Israeli aggressions on Lebanon's sovereignty. We call upon the United Nations to condemn these attacks.
The Iranian-backed Hezbollah is a major military force inside Lebanon that rivals the Lebanese army. It's part of the Lebanese government, but takes its orders from Tehran. But Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, told CBN News, if Lebanon doesn't take control of Hezbollah, Lebanon will pay the price.
And we will bury Hezbollah under the rubble of Lebanon. So the Lebanese government, the Lebanese army, they have to take action before it's too late.
Heavy exchanges of fire erupted between Israel and Hezbollah along the Lebanese border. Plumes of smoke could be seen rising above Lebanon in what some describe as one of the worst exchanges of fire since the 2006 Second Lebanon War. The Israel Defense Forces ordered Israelis to stay inside near the border areas. Israel said the clashes began after a Hezbollah cell infiltrated across the northern border. Following the incident, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel was monitoring the situation and its policy was clear.
First, we will not allow Iran to entrench militarily on our border with Syria. Second, Lebanon and Hezbollah will bear the responsibility for any attack against us emanating from the Lebanese territory. Third, the IDF is prepared for any scenario. We're active in all areas for the security of Israel, both close to our borders and far from them.
Earlier, alternate Prime Minister and Defense Minister Benny Gantz said Israel would prevent Iran from sending advanced weapons and precision missile capabilities to Syria and Lebanon.
I remind both Lebanon and Syria that they're responsible for what is happening in their territory, and the State of Israel will demand this responsibility from Syria and Lebanon. We're not looking to make unnecessary escalations, but whoever tests us will meet a very high operative capacity that I hope we will not have to put to use.
Israel had been braced for an attack since a Hezbollah operative was killed last week in an alleged Israeli airstrike on Iranian targets inside Syria. U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley made an unannounced visit to Israel to discuss security challenges in the region. His visit came at a time of heightened tensions with Iran and its allies across the Middle East after a series of unexplained explosions have rocked the Islamic Republic. Danny Danon has been Israel's ambassador to the United Nations for 5 years. I sat down with Ambassador Danon for an exclusive interview as he wraps up his service in that tough global arena. He told us that even though many say the opportunity has passed for Israel to declare sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, there's still time to make an historic move.
Now we are discussing the peace plan and maybe applying sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. I support that. I think it's about time that we will do it. And we are grateful for the great cooperation between Jerusalem and Washington.
Tell us about applying sovereignty. First of all, some people call it annexation, but I think correctly it would be declaring sovereignty over parts of Judea and Samaria. Is that right?
Chris, you cannot annex something that belongs to you. When you read the Bible, you understand that Judea and Samaria, it's part of our homeland. So you cannot annex it. We can apply sovereignty. And I think we should do it. We have rights to the land in Judea and Samaria. We have biblical rights. We have historical rights. And also, according to international law, we have rights to the land. So it is about time. I told the Prime Minister, I told my friends in the government, look at the history of Israel. When we had strong leaders who took strong decisions, we prevailed. That's what happened when David Ben-Gurion decided to actually move the Knesset from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and declare Jerusalem as our capital. That's what happened in 1981 when Prime Minister Menachem Begin applied sovereignty over the Golan Heights. It wasn't an easy decision. By the way, the US, back then it was President Reagan, the US condemned Israel and punished Israel. And look where we are today, that you have the Golan Heights as a buffer between the radicals in Syria and the communities of the Galilee. So we should do the same. We should do the right thing for Israel, the right thing for the Jewish people. And I think no one can argue and claim that the land belongs to somebody else. And I told it to my colleagues in the UN, in the Security Council. I took out the Bible and I told them, this is our deed to the land. If you can prove it otherwise, do it now. They were quiet, because no one can actually deny the claim of the Jewish people to the land of Judea.
Tell us as well about the importance of the San Remo resolution. We were there together at the 90th anniversary. We actually did an anniversary special at the 100th anniversary of San Remo. Why is that so important in this whole context, especially about applying sovereignty over Judea and Samaria?
For me, biblical rights, it's enough. I don't need more explanation. Some will argue it's not enough. So I show them the historical rights. And they will argue it's not enough. We have international law. So let's speak about international law. And when you go back to reading the history of international law, you go back to 1917, to the Balfour Declaration, which acknowledges the right of the Jews for a Jewish homeland in the land of Israel. And right after that, in 1920, you have the San Remo Conference, where the superpowers come in together and actually acknowledge our rights to the land. And then you go back to 1945, when the UN was established. They actually accepted previous agreements. So they accepted the San Remo Conference, and today, according to the UN Charter, Israel has the rights to the land in Judea and Samaria.
Right now, Prime Minister Netanyahu was made July 1st as a possible date to move, to declare sovereignty. That's been moved, and now there's a complicated government, a coalition that may be not on the same page. How would you describe, perhaps politically, how annexation or how sovereignty can go forward?
First of all, Chris, you always have the issue of timing. Also, when I was involved in moving the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, I got phone calls from many leaders who told me, Danny, maybe it's not the right timing. And I told them, you never have the right timing. When you do something right, you just do it. And that's exactly what we have to do today. We cannot wait for a better timing for applying sovereignty over the communities in Judea and Samaria. Today, yes, we are dealing with the COVID crisis, we have economical crisis, but at the same time, we have a friend in the White House. We have a friend which actually stand with us and give us the support to move forward. And I think it will be a reality check for the Palestinians as well. If you do not negotiate with us, if you don't speak with us, we are not waiting. We are moving forward.
Do you expect an announcement in the near future?
We have a short window to take actions. Today, we are starting soon the month of August. In September, we have the Jewish holidays. And in November, you have the elections in the US. So the next few weeks are the crucial weeks for taking a bold decision. First of all is our Prime Minister, our government. That's where you have to take the decision. And the support from our strongest ally, the US. So I will do my best to support those two great leaders to take the right decision, because history will judge their leadership according to those decisions.
Coming up, despite lockdowns and the coronavirus, see the group of people that keeps on coming to Israel. Despite lockdowns, travel bans, and quarantines, one group keeps coming to Israel, Jewish immigrants. And as we'll see, their arrival fulfills biblical prophecy and begins an historic era of aliyah. Even during COVID-19, several thousand Jewish immigrants coming from Russia, Europe, North America, and Ethiopia have landed at Tel Aviv's David Ben-Gurion Airport.
This is a very unusual and exciting season for us, that these are people that many of them, they were planning to come to Israel, say this summer, so they could get their kids in school in the fall. And then COVID hit. They had quit their job and then they're in limbo. We call them rescue flights to bring these Jews here who are really stuck and can't go forward.
For more than 30 years, the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem has helped over 150,000 Jews to make aliyah.
It is fulfillment of God's covenant promises to the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and it's fulfillment of the prophetic words from the prophets who were servants of those covenants and said, even though God is exiling you, He will come find you and bring you back. And so this is an exciting work that we believe has eternal value, in that it will be here back in the land of Israel, where God will pour out His Spirit upon the Jewish people.
One of the outcomes of COVID-19 is that people are realizing that for the future, Israel is the best place to be.
For 90 years, the Jewish Agency has played a critical role in fostering Jewish immigration. When COVID-19 subsides, it expects a massive increase.
We anticipate that in the next 5 years, there is a potential of 250,000 olim that will come to Israel, and we need to work together with the government of Israel in order to build a special plan that will help them to make aliyah.
Nefesh B'Nefesh works with the Jewish Agency to keep the immigration pipeline moving from North America to Israel. In June 2019, they had just over 5,000 calls for information. In June 2020, they had more than 25,000 calls.
He showed me greater shakings coming on the United States, and he said that the Jewish people needed to be warned because their destiny was ultimately in Israel.
Tom Hess says he wrote Let My People Go in 1987 after God warned him that one day the Jews in the U.S. would be safer in Israel. He just finished the 10th edition.
The 15th chapter has to do with what happened in just this year, 2020, with all the things that happened with the epidemic and anti-Semitism and things that are happening in New York and all over the U.S. For the first time, probably since Israel was reborn, many Jews in the United States think that it's better to live in Israel than it is in the U.S. They used to think they can live there and they can bless Israel from afar. But now they believe that it's time to come back to Israel, because I think they see the ominous things that are happening.
That now includes the frightening growth of anti-Semitism.
Just seems this ancient hatred and animosity towards the Jews just doesn't want to die, and Jews are being blamed for COVID-19. It's totally absurd and outrageous. But if you're Jewish living out there among the Gentile nations and you're still getting falsely blamed for these things, no wonder many of them want to come home to safety in Israel.
Parsons sees Israel approaching a milestone nearly 3,000 years in the making.
The Jews have actually been in exile since the Babylonian times. Even in the days of Jesus, more than half the Jews were still living abroad. This corona crisis could be the thing that pushes Israel over that threshold that more than half the Jews in the world are finally living back in the land. And this would be the first time since even the Babylonian exile 2,700 years ago that we could say the exile is officially, formally, finally over. Whether it took a COVID crisis to do this or whatever, there's something about this moment we do feel is prophetic.
Hess calls it a time to pray.
I think that Christians should pray that God will open the gates of their cities, open the gates of their nations, that the Jewish people will be able to come back to Israel. May they come back sooner than later, because this is the year of Aliyah. This, I believe, is the appointed time for the Jews to come back from the West, back to their homeland, Israel.
Up next, an American Jewish leader describes the pitfalls of the new cancel culture and what he sees as an alarming rise of anti-Semitism. The cancel culture, the drive to stop views considered politically incorrect, is spreading in the United States, and it's affecting the American Jewish world. I talked with Morton Klein, the president of the Zionist Organization of America, about the backlash he's getting for his public statements. Morton Klein from the Zionist Organization of America, thanks for joining us. First of all, how would you explain, how has cancel culture come to the American Jewish world?
First of all, I would call it the destruction culture. It is much worse than cancel culture, where people who disagree with you want to destroy you, end your jobs, end your credibility. I simply saw that the group, Black Lives Matter, were gaining visibility, credibility, and legitimacy. And when I checked their platform said that Israel is committing genocide against the Arabs, which is amazing because there were 200,000 Arabs in Israel in 1948. Today, there are 2 million Arabs. This is, of course, reverse genocide. It's a ridiculous statement to make. They call Israel an apartheid state, even though 15% of the parliament in Israel are Arabs. And they support boycotting Israel. They say Israel stole the land. They say Zionism is white supremacy. They want all aid cut to Israel. By the way, they don't condemn any country in the world, only Israel. And in terms of America, they want the U.S. military ended to end capitalism. They want reparations to Libya and Iraq, two terrorist regimes. And they want to end the nuclear family. And they want children to be allowed to choose their gender. And in rallies, I wrote, in the last 2 weeks, they're screaming death to America, death to Israel. This is not Iran. This is America. You're seeing this. And they're saying that Israelis kill Arab children. So when I wrote all this, 16 of the top Jewish leaders in America, including the Reform Jewish movement, the Conservative Jewish movement, Rick Jacobs, Rabbi Blumenthal, the Jewish women's groups, J Street, New Israel Fund, condemned me and called me a racist. I'm called a racist because I expose the racist platform of Black Lives Matter. What does that have to do with me being a racist? Of course I'm not a racist. and the number demanded that the ZOA, the Zionist Organization of America, be thrown out of the umbrella group of the 51 major Jewish organizations. Of course, it's not going to happen, but they're really wanting to demean my message and harm my credibility. And the main reason they want to do this, there are two reasons. One, they hate the political stance the ZOA has taken against the Oslo agreements, against making concessions to the terrorist regime of the Palestinian Authority, against giving any aid to the Palestinians while they're paying Arabs to murder Jews. The Palestinian Authority pays Arabs to murder Jews. If they murder a Jew, they get a lifetime pension at 4 times the average salary of a Palestinian. And also they're afraid. They're afraid if we don't appease the blacks, they'll destroy synagogues, Jewish educational institutions. So it's really fear. So I filed a complaint within the conference demanding a public apology and sanctions against all of them. I didn't take this sitting down, and now they've become quiet in the last 2 weeks since I filed this. When I've talked to them and said, why aren't you condemning the organization Black Lives Matter as anti-Semitic and anti-white and anti-American? They say, this is not a time to be discussing anti-Semitism. This is a time to be discussing rights and equality for blacks. I said, that's fine, but that doesn't negate talking about a serious problem that this group has with hating Jews and hating the Jewish state and hating America.
Do you see an exponential rise in anti-Semitism in the last several months?
Painfully and tragically, yes. We see major entertainers condemning Jews, condemning Israel, athletes condemning it. And what we don't see politicians speaking out against it. We don't see Jewish leaders speaking out. We don't see journalists editorializing about this. And when it comes to Congress, you have open Jew haters and Israel haters and America haters. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, AOC from Queens. Not only have the Democrats not condemned them for their anti-Semitism, they have defended them. And where is the media? Where are the pastors and the Jewish leaders and the rabbis? They're nowhere. They're afraid to condemn these people. But only yesterday, I spoke to Ice Cube. Ice Cube is one of the major black rappers. I spoke to him for 2 hours. I asked him personally to condemn anti-Semitism and support those athletes who are condemning anti-Semitism. And he did. He tweeted out, I hate anti-Semitism. I support these black athletes who are condemning anti-Semitism. So that was a little start that a major rapper, Ice Cube, has made these statements publicly in a tweet.
Well, Morton Klein, president of the Zionist Organization of America, thanks so much for joining us right now on Jerusalem Dateline. Still ahead, it's the saddest day on the Jewish calendar, but also hope for the future. It's called Tisha B'Av, and it's the saddest day on the Jewish calendar. I interviewed Ze'ev Orenstein in ancient Jerusalem at the City of David during a Facebook Live, and he explained what this day is all about. We are at a special time and also a special place. Ze'ev, first of all, explain us what's today and why is this so special to the Jewish people?
So this evening is going to mark the, let's call it not the festival, but the very solemn day known as Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the month of Av on the Jewish calendar, which marks the destruction of both the first and second temples. First temple period Jerusalem, second temple period Jerusalem. First temple period Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians 2,500 years ago, 586 BCE. And in the year 70 CE, the Romans destroy Second Temple period Jerusalem. And for the last thousands of years, the Jewish people have been marking this day as a day of sadness, of commemoration, of mourning over the destruction of Jerusalem and many other tragedies that have befallen the Jewish people throughout history. On Tisha B'Av, it's a day of fasting. We don't eat, we don't drink, many other restrictions, all with the intention of putting us in the frame of mind to have serious introspection about why Jerusalem was destroyed all those years ago, what lessons need to be learned from that so that we can transition, as the Bible speaks of, that Tisha B'Av in the future will actually be a day of celebration. But that's only going to come about when we fully internalize the lessons of why Tisha B'Av has been a day of sadness and mourning and destruction for so long, and when we learn those proper lessons and when we're able to apply them to our lives individually, collectively, societally, when we could do that, then Tisha B'Av will really become a day of celebration for us and hopefully for the whole world.
It seems more of the Jewish people are looking forward to the day when Tisha B'Av can be a day of celebration. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.
Alpha.